Welcome to my Backstage Pass. We're here with Billy Hubbard, and my name is Lee Zimmerman. And today, we have the great honor and pleasure of interviewing what I can only describe as a true legend, Mr. Charlie McCoy. Charlie, welcome to my Backstage Pass.
Hey, thank you so much. I like to consider myself most blessed instead of a legend.
Well, how about the word iconic? An icon, does that work for you?
Well, you know, hanging around a long time will get you somewhere.
That's funny. That's funny. And you've worked with so many, all right, here's the word again. You've worked with so many legends over the course of your career. And I wonder if sometimes you don't look back and think, my gosh, was that really me? I worked with Elvis. I worked with Dylan. Was that really me? I mean, does it ever really kind of seem almost beyond belief?
It does. It does. Sometimes I look back at it and I think, wow, you know, it's like a fairy tale. It really is.
Well, you must feel like at this point, well, I don't know. I mean, do you feel like you've done it all, or is there still things remaining in your bucket list that you've yet to do and that you look forward to?
Well, I look forward. You know, I'm still an active studio musician, and I just love. I love going to the studio. You know, and of course, in this weird year, most of my sessions have been all by myself, but I really love going to the studio with a full group of musicians, you know, and recording the old way. Mm-hmm. I really love that. I've done 7 or 8 of those this year, but everything else I've done has been, you know, just me. Of course, with this technology, you know, it's possible to play on somebody's record from Europe, you know.
Yeah.
Charlie.
And I've done several of those. But I just love to do that. I like to make my own records, although because of the internet, making CDs has become an expensive hobby.
I was reading in your book, and you mentioned something about the way you do session work. Rather, used to, you know, you did it as you do 1 take or 2 takes with everybody in the same room.
Back then, they didn't have the technology that they have today. Everybody had to be there. Everybody had to perform, and that was the record. So those guys, those early Nashville A-team musicians, they were amazing. Wow. You know, they were expected to do 3 or 4 songs they'd never heard before and make the record in 3 hours.
Wow.
And those guys were genius. You know, the Floyd Kramer, Grady Martin, Harold Bradley, those guys, they're the ones who started this Nashville recording, because in the early days, there was no studios here, and even the Opry people had to go out of town to make their records. And one day the Bradley brothers got together and said, you know, this is silly. This is silly for people to have to go somewhere else. The Opry's here, the musicians are here. They need to record here. Right. So they went and built a studio on Music Row, and that was how it began.
Wow. So, I mean, that's crazy to think. Of course, if you're the A-team, I guess you can pull it off in 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, and that's the way I learned to do it. And it was a long time before they got to where, you know, it was so you could have unlimited tracks and do your part as many times as you want to. You know, it's become kind of common these days. Some musicians have gotten a little lazy because they can sit there and play until they think it's perfect, you know.
Oh gosh, I can't imagine how upset your bandmates would get if you're the guy that made them redo it.
Well, no, usually what they would do would be stay afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
And then work on their part.
It's like having to stay after school. When you misbehave, you have to stay late. Yeah. Understood.
Yeah. Yeah, I was trained to to get my part during the 3 hours.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. And if back in the old day, if one guy messed up real bad, everybody had to do it again. And nobody wanted to be that guy.
Oh, yeah, I bet.
Oh. Well, I mean, I remember when I was in school, I was always the last guy chosen to play on the team. It would get down to me and one other nerd. And so I know how I feel. I'm relating to that, Charlie. You were the equivalent of the high school jock as far as those studio guys were concerned.
You came.
Well, I was 20 years old when they let me.
Wow.
When they let me join them, and what an education. Jeez. I couldn't have bought that education,
Man, and I remember you telling me once you were up in West Virginia at that little town. Oak Hill, is that where it was?
Oak Hill's where I was born. That's where Hank Williams passed away.
Yeah, and that's the reason I remembered that, because he left Knoxville here where we're at, and made it that far, I guess, before they found him. Well, my buddy here, Lee, he's was in Miami, and then I remember I was surprised to learn that. I guess I learned that in your book, that you moved to Miami for a while. That's quite a change.
Yeah, I lived in Miami from age 9 to 19.
Wow. What do you remember about Miami?
It was a great place then. It was really great. It had of course it's grown.
Yes.
It's grown by miles, since then, but it almost had a small town feel. And you could go, we'd go out on our bikes and ride forever, and nobody, there was not that much traffic, and nobody was worried about us, and it was a short trip to the closest beach, and it was common for a bunch of teenagers to jump in the car and go to the beach. It was no big deal,
Wow. And so what brought you to Nashville?
I met Mel Tillis.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So in the mid 50s, I was a rock and roller. I played guitar, electric guitar, and I was a Chuck Berry fan. I had learned to play a lot of his music and sing it. And I joined a group there in Miami called the Old South Jamboree. And every Saturday night they would have a country music dance at the National Guard Armory. Some of the guys in that band were Johnny Paycheck.
Wow.
He was the bass player. By then he went by the name of Donnie Young. Bill Phillips, who was a country artist, later became the opening act for the Kitty Wells Johnny Wright show.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Justice was a fiddle player. He toured with George and Tammy.
Mm-hmm.
So these guys were real country music players, and I was not. I was there to play rock and roll 10 minutes each hour. But one night, Mel Tillis came in, and I was singing my Chuck Berry, and when I came off the stage, he come over to me and he said, "Boy, you come to Nashville, I'll get you on records tomorrow."
Wow. Wow.
That was like showing a steak to a wolf, And day after high school, I drove to Nashville, went to the office where his manager was, and his manager was a music publisher. Jim Denny used to manage the Opry. He's now in the Country Music Hall of Fame. And I walked in and introduced myself and said, Mel Tillis said I need to come up here and see him. And the woman said, "Oh, Mel's out of town."
Oh, my gosh.
I just drove 800 miles, And so I said, "Well, oh my gosh." She said, "Well, let you talk to Mr. Denny." So Jim Denny came out. He said this, I couldn't believe this. He said, "Mel told me about you."
Wow.
He said, "You want to get some auditions?" And I said, "Yeah." So he took me over. I auditioned for Chet Atkins and Owen Bradley singing Chuck Berry.
Wow.
And I had no idea who they even were.
Holy cow.
Well, that might have been better, because otherwise you might have been very intimidating. It
was better. And they were so nice, well, son, we think you're pretty good, but we just don't do this kind of music here.
Oh gosh.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Mel was from Florida. I don't know what town he was from.
He's from Pahokee.
Oh, okay. So
Pahokee, Florida, which is right up on the southeast coast of Lake Okeechobee.
Okay.
In fact, when you go in there, this big sign, hometown of Mel Tillis.
Oh, really? Yeah, man.
So anyway, of course, I was, I'm 18. I think I know everything. And they said no. And I'm like, And then Owen said, I'm having a session today. Would you like to come watch? And I said, well, yeah. So I went back to his studio and watched a 13-year-old Brenda Lee record one of her first hits.
Wow.
And when I sit there and watch that session and watch those musicians, and when I heard the first playback, I said right then, I don't want to be a singer. I want to do this. And I went back. I couldn't hardly sleep that night. I was so excited about what I'd seen and heard. And then I went back to Florida, started the university, and I didn't even last a year. I got a call for a guitar job in Nashville from some old friends of mine.
Wow.
And I broke my father's heart, dropped out of college, went to Nashville. By the way, my father finally forgave me when I introduced him to Dolly.
You know what? I could see that.
Hey, I saw you on that.
Dolly,
I was watching a Netflix thing the other day with Dolly on it, and there was a documentary, and there you were. You're on my big screen, and you look like you were right here. But yeah, I thought that was fascinating. You were talking about Dolly and some of your stories. But I remember that one thing I was going to ask you while you were young, for your young days. I remember seeing that you had a black Les Paul, and I thought, well, I wonder if he still got that thing.
No, I sold it. I don't have it anymore.
I was just curious. I thought, no one knows keep stuff like that. Wish we had.
You said before that back in the day, Nashville didn't have the studios. It was nothing like it is today. So you were kind of there at that pivotal point where Nashville really came of age. And I think it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts about what Nashville represents today and how it's come along. And is it for the better? Is it for the worse? I mean, technically, I'm sure it's great, but the rise of country music and the commerciality of it all. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, the Bradley brothers built their studio in about 1957, and they started to work immediately in there because all the Opry people were like, oh, hey, this is great. Well, then shortly after that, RCA Victor came and a block away, they built RCA Studio B. So now you had, RCA probably had a roster of 20 artists. Decca, which was Owen Bradley, he had a roster of probably that. And now you also have Columbia Records, Capitol Records, MGM Records, Mercury Records. They've got artists too, so they're going to record there as well. And so from the day, in the late 50s on, it was very busy round the clock. Now it was pretty much the same musicians doing all the work.
Right.
The original Nashville A-Team. And if you were in a session in the morning at Owen Bradley and you went overtime, the session at RCA would start late. The next one,
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, they got it going, and it was incredible. Owen Bradley had about 15 or 20 artists. Most of them were in the charts all the time. Same with Chet. Most of them were in the charts all the time. And then the thing that happened was they started crossing over. Brenda Lee, she crossed over. the Everlys started recording there.
Right. Yeah.
Roy Orbison, and of course Elvis. So that's 4 of the biggest pop acts in America are making their records in Nashville with the same musicians that are doing all the country stuff. Wow. And so what these guys were doing was just incredible. And because when they let me join them, they'd already been doing this 5 years, you know.
Yeah.
And here I did an interview last summer with BBC, and I was talking to a guy, and I was trying to impress on this guy how great the old Nashville A-Team was. And he said, well, in America, you have the Wrecking Crew, you have Memphis, you have Muscle Shoals, you have Motown. And I said to the guy, let me tell you the difference. Wrecking Crew, all written arrangements. Memphis, Motown, Muscle Shoals, they had no clock, which means a session could last 3 hours. It could last 6 hours, you know.
Wow.
Because in Nashville, we had the Musicians Union here, and we belonged to it. And that's where it was a 3-hour session. And that was the difference.
Now, I remember one thing. I don't remember everything I read sometimes, but a few things stuck out to me when I was reading some of your book there and about Dylan and when you recorded with him. Didn't it take a lot longer or something?
Oh, yeah. That first Dylan session was like a marathon because, well, okay. So number one, Dylan came to Nashville he wasn't that crazy about the idea. The producer talked him into it. So we were booked at 2:00 one day and his flight was late. He didn't show up till 6. And then his producer said, he told me to tell you guys he hasn't finished writing the first song yet. So you guys, hang loose. So we did, and we started recording at 4 a.m. the next morning.
Wow.
Okay. The song called Sad-Eyed Lady of the Lowlands.
Oh, God.
Which was 14 minutes long.
Wow.
And you're sitting there, you've been trying to stay awake all night, and you're sitting there saying, please don't let me make a mistake.
Gosh. Man, that's a lot of coffee, I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm telling you. But then after that, it went much better. And we did the album Blonde on Blonde, which was his biggest album.
Yeah. Masterpiece. Yeah.
And after that album was released and it became a giant success, man, the floodgates opened for, artists, especially folk rock artists, to come to Nashville and record. I mean, it was crazy. It required more studios. It gave a whole lot more musicians a whole lot of work, you know. Man. And this town was really hopping.
Wow.
Well, I know you did Paul Simon. You worked with Joan Baez. You worked with Buffy St. Marie. So that in itself reflects the fact that you were on to something there as far as that folk music was concerned. But I remember when you and I spoke, you were saying that Dylan was kind of nonchalant. I mean, you would say, "Hey, Bob, is this the way you want it?" And if I'm remembering correctly, he would say, "Whatever you think."
Yeah, I was asking questions and he wasn't answering. He would say, "I don't know, man. What do you think?"
Yeah, what do you think, man? What do you think, Charlie?
Yeah, so maybe by rights I should have been the producer on that album.
Maybe, yeah.
I'm just another question before we get off this stuff is: do you ever have a artist come in and they're just in love with their bandmates and insist they do the session work? How was even back then? To play on the album, or did you just get most of them just have session players?
Yeah, Dylan.
Yeah. It always. I thought it was always funny that Mel Tillis's records all said Mel Tillis and the Statesiders.
Right, that's what I was wondering, because you read the album sometimes and you think, well, it seems like that's the real band.
But the Statesiders didn't play on his records.
Ah.
It was all studio guys.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, I mean, was there any kind of culture shock there for you or for the artist? Like when Bob Dylan comes in, he's such an enigmatic individual, you know, had such mystique and, you know, that sort of thing. And you guys, you know, you were doing what you were doing, you were pros. So was there any kind of cultural divide that you had to transcend to just start the communication going?
Not really. You know, he would pick up his guitar and play the song for us. We'd learn it, you know, and then I was session leader, so I'm the one who kept asking him, and so we finally just did what we thought based on the song, you know, and I finally told the producer, I said, I'm asking him questions. He's not answering. I'm going to quit asking.
Yeah.
And we're just going to do what we think. And he said, hey, great. That's what I would do if I were you. I said, okay.
So when
we'll.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, so he said, go on and do that.
So when you hear these brilliant songs, when you hear a Bob Dylan song for the first time, he's playing it to you. Is it kind of dazzling? I mean, his songs are just, they were so different and unique and wow.
But just remember this, that this town is so full of amazing songwriters.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just more of what you're used to. They're a little different style, you know.
Yeah.
But it's the same. It's the same thing. And I was taught early on the philosophy of the Nashville A-Team is this: number one, you studio musician, check your ego at the door.
Yeah.
We don't care how much you know. All we care is what can you do. Yeah. And number two, the artist and the song is a picture. We are the frame. Our job is to frame the picture, not to distract from it.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I read books, I always like getting these simple little nuggets of truth. They're not simple, but I mean, and I remember another one that you said was that about the words or something. They said that if you can't, somebody gave you some advice once, said as a session guy, you were playing, I think you were playing maybe too much or something. Somebody critiqued you and said, hey, make sure you don't over cover the words or something.
Yeah, right. That's it. That's it. Frame the picture. Don't take away from it. And for me too, you know, with harmonica, especially female artists, you're right in their vocal range.
Oh.
And it can really get distracting, you know, if you play too much.
Wow.
So obviously what you're saying is check your ego at the door. But these artists that came in, did they check their egos at the door?
Well, not all of them.
No.
I mean, some of them were, but for the most part, almost all of the artists that came here were really nice. And and of course, all the country artists, they knew everybody knew everybody,
right.
You know, and it was like a family gathering on a lot of the sessions. And Owen Bradley was a guy that he had the same group he used all the time. And a couple of the other record labels did too. Chet was a little more adventuresome. He's a guy that gave a lot of young new musicians a chance, you know. And but it was most of the time it was a great atmosphere. Everybody was very friendly, and everyone appreciated what everyone else was doing.
One thing before we got off Dylan, I remember Charlie Daniels once said, I mean, it's been years since I heard him say this, but he said that when Dylan first came to town, that he kind of made it sound like folks were thinking, man, this guy can't write, or maybe his lyrics weren't put together right. And he said, then the next thing you know, everybody's trying to copy him. So,
yeah.
So he must have got some criticism when he first rolled into town or something.
What was it?
Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Columbia Studio had bought Owen Bradley's place there.
Oh, yeah.
And that studio, his original studio, was called the Quonset Hut. And if you've ever been over there and seen the building, the back, you can see the roof line on the back where the roof was built like an old Quonset Hut, like the Army used to build. Oh. And so he sold that studio to Columbia Records, and it was booked around the clock because so many hits were cut there. And so Columbia Records said, man, we got this much business. Let's build another studio. We'll get even more. Well, they built then what became Studio A. I never figured out why it was A and the Quonset Hut was B, but that's what they did. And nobody would use it. Huh. People are superstitious, man. All the hits were cut down there.
Heck yeah.
So when they called with Bob Dylan, Columbia Records said, the New York people said, listen, we want Bob Dylan to have the Quonset Hut all week. And Nashville Columbia said, no, it's already booked. And we're not canceling out our regular customers for anybody, Yeah. But we have Studio A. So they finally said, well, okay. And it was great because they could block book it then all week because nobody else was there, Oh,
yeah.
Wow. And that became his place, Studio A, because he also did John Wesley Harding, Nashville Skyline, and Self-Portrait there.
Which were groundbreaking records at the time because the whole swing from rock to country to this hybrid. I mean, it was kind of revolutionary at the time because those two cultures were really divided. The long hair rock and rollers versus the country folks who were perceived in a different way. You were really transcending both styles and culturally as well.
Yeah. We a lot of the older folks in Nashville said, "Yeah, you guys are recording all them hippie artists."
Yeah. Yeah. Was it ever intimidating though when like an Elvis or a Dylan or a Ringo Starr walked in? Was it ever, wow, got to get myself together here?
Okay. It just depends how you look at it. Okay, Ringo Starr was a huge star, but so is Johnny Cash.
Right.
In our minds, even though, okay, you're reaching a much smaller audience, your sales are probably much, much less, but in your market, you are just as big and successful as they are.
Yeah.
Loretta Lynn was as big a star to the country people as Dylan was to the folk rock people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the way we had to look at it. These people are, whatever genre they're in, they're huge,
Hey, speaking of Johnny Cash, now what's this story about when you played a harmonica? Was it that the one you did like upside down or something? You did something special?
Yeah, he asked me, when they called me for my first session with Cash, they asked me, can you play harmonica like Bob Dylan? And, it's harder than it sounds to make it work.
Sounds hard.
And so I ended up, he did the song, I'm having a senior moment.
I know what it was, Ain't It Me, Babe, or something like that.
That's right, It Ain't Me, Babe.
Oh, yeah.
And I ended up, I was trying to play that stuff, and I ended up turning my harmonica upside down. But hey, they loved it. It worked out, and then my big break with Johnny Cash was in 1965. They called me and they did Orange Blossom Special, a vocal version, and they asked me to play the first solo, and I was trying to figure out. This song is such a fiddle song. Let me try to think of something that sounds kind of fiddle-ish. And I ended up doing the thing with two harmonicas. And at the end of the session, Johnny Cash walked over and said, "Can you show me how to do that?"
Wait a minute, you mean you played them? How do you do two at once?
No, you don't do it two at once. You alternate them.
You alternate.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say,
And
man, that's pretty.
so I showed Cash what I did, and I said, "I'll tell you what, I'll give you these two harmonicas." So
Wow.
I gave him the two harmonicas, and after the session was over, I'm thinking, "Hey, you know what? I got to seriously learn this song because this is very cool."
Wow.
And I did. I recorded it. We had a single on it in 1972, I think, that got up the charts. But then I kept playing it, and I started playing it better and faster. So I recorded it again
Cool.
faster.
Hey, I was telling his Johnny Cash's grandson. I don't know if you remember Thomas Gabriel. He was Kathy's son, and Lee and I interviewed him recently, and I was talking to him a couple of days ago. I told him that we was going to be talking, but he was at the time. He said, well, he probably won't remember me. He was a little blonde headed kid, but if you like Johnny's, you want to hear Johnny's sound in his grandson. He's the only, I think, grandson or kids he's had that has that ability. His hair raising. His name's Thomas Gabriel, but man, he's just exactly, you can't hear. If you close your eyes, you'll think you're listening to Johnny. So.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So when Ringo came over, I'm a little starstruck here. I have to admit it. I am a little starstruck. When Ringo Starr comes over, I know that you guys took this all in stride, but here was a member of the Beatles. He's from England, he's from a totally different world. Was he intimidated? I with his love of country music, he walks into the real deal here. Did you sense that, well, maybe, he's trying to get adjusted to this, at the same time?
He seemed to be very much at home. He loved country music.
Right.
Which, he talked to us, and there was a reporter there the first day and said, who's your favorite country artist? And he said, Kitty Wells.
Kitty
Yeah.
Wells.
And he was great. He had so much fun, and when you see that going on, it's everybody relaxes and everybody was, we had a great time. The album was called Beaucoups of Blues.
Right.
It was recorded. The studio's no longer there. It's now a parking lot. It's the studio Scotty Moore built over on 18th Avenue. It was called Studio 19. Well, first it was called Music City Recorders, and then somebody changed the name to Studio 19. But that's where Ringo did that album.
Did he kind of take a leading role? Did he say, "This is what I want. This is what
he
I'd
had
like
a few
to
ideas, yeah.
But did he accede to you guys? Did he say, you guys know how to do this? Do it.
Well, it was kind of a mutual thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Pete Drake was the session leader,
right?
And he was, other than Ringo suggesting some things, Pete kind of took control. So that's
right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I think we'd be remiss here if we didn't quickly bring up the fact that you were with Hee Haw for nearly 2 decades as their musical director.
Oh, yeah.
And again, here we have a landmark show. I guess it was sort of a spin-off of sorts from Laugh-In, the same sort of idea, but tailored to a country audience, which again was kind of emerging at the time as far as, the mainstream, television mainstream was concerned.
Yeah, it was, I didn't join until season 7.
Okay.
And I joined, first I was called to come in and play behind 2 songs behind Ray Charles. Just that. And then after that, at the end of that show, the boss man, his name was Sam Lavello, he was a producer. He called me in and said, we'd like for you to consider being a regular member of the band. And I said, man, I don't know. I am so busy doing studio work. He said, hey, the band only comes in about 8 days a month.
Wow, great gig.
Yeah. and it only they only taped 2 months a year.
Oh, okay.
They taped in June. They did 13 shows, and they would air from like September to Christmas. Then they'd tape in October and do 13 more, and they would air like from New Year's to like April, and then all 26 would rerun.
Wow.
So that's the way they did it, and you never win it. The model was Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In.
Yeah, yeah.
And the production style was the same. You never went in and did a show. You went in and did segments, and somebody put them together later. They edited everything. The whole show was done in the editing room.
Huh.
They would do comedy bits like, barbershop. They'd set up the set, the lights, microphones, do 13 of them back to back.
Wow.
And they'd have strict comedy days. They'd do nothing but comedy all day long. They'd do the barbershop. They'd do the thing with the two guys, gloom, agony, despair. The girls singing, we don't go around spreading rumors,
Well,
They would do
Cinderella or what?
Yeah, right.
Archie Campbell had that.
And they could do so much work in a day. It was unbelievable, because when you got a cast that big, time is really money.
Wow.
And then we have music days. We do 4 artists a day.
Wow.
2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon.
Wow.
Now each artist would do 2 songs and 1 little short comedy bit, and that was about it. So, it was a well-oiled machine, I'll tell you that. So anyway, after I played with Ray Charles, he said, well, why don't you try 1 half season? Okay, I'll try it. Well, as it worked out, there was no conflicts in my studio work, and I loved it. Oh my gosh, talking about legends, man, oh man! Every day you come to work, there's Buck Owens, there's Roy Clark, there's Grandpa Jones.
Wow.
There's Minnie Pearl. I mean, my gosh. And everybody there they were having a ball, and they were so nice, So at the end of that half season, he said, well, what do you think? And I said, man, I really love this. He said, well, we want you to be band leader.
Wow.
So I agreed to try that a half season.
Wow.
So I did. And then at the end of that one, he said, our music director, George Ritchie, is leaving the show to marry Tammy Wynette.
Wow.
We'd like for you to consider being music director.
Wow.
So and then I stayed until the end, which the show ran 24 seasons.
Yeah.
Wow. Speaking of,
and that was so I stayed it out to the end. I just loved it. It was so much fun.
Speaking of band leader, a friend of mine, I was in a studio last week, and a guy here locally, Lil Mo, anyway, he used to play with Lori Morgan, but he took a girl, it's called a Texaco, where they had the people from different regions, would play to compete. And anyway, to the national site, I thought it was Texaco Challenge. I could be wrong, but he was telling me, and I was mentioning your name to him, and he said, I went into play. The girl he was playing with here was from Airtown, actually won $100,000 that year. And Lil said that. Yeah, he said that he got there and he said, looked over and you were the band leader. So he said that he said that was tight, one of the best bands that he had ever, of course, played with. But anyway, we were talking about. So man, you're all over the place.
You are, and you've had so many solo albums of your own, and I'm curious. When it's your album, you're the guy in the spotlight. The responsibility is really on you. You're going to get the attention. When you're playing for someone else, you're in the background there, and you do your best, obviously. But what's the difference? I mean, do you prefer one over the other? Do you like doing your own thing? Do you like working with others? Is there a difference there?
I love the combination. I mean, after I did that, after I saw the Brendan Lee session and I came up here, I never had any thoughts about being an artist anymore. And Fred Foster asked me on a session to come out and join him for lunch. He was the owner of Monument Records. And he said, I want you to make some records. And I said, really? And do what? He said, I don't know. Just go in and be creative. And I made records for 8 years that we couldn't give away. And at the end of 8, we struck. We had the instrumental version of Today I Started Loving You Again.
Yep.
And that album won me the Grammy.
Right. It went top 20 in Billboard. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And then all of a sudden, I said, now wait a minute. This artist thing is not too shabby. This is kind of fun. And so I continued to make albums. I think I had 10 chart country singles, and I don't know, that may be a record. I'm not sure. And I did 14 albums for Monument, and then they went out of business, and I thought, I'm going to keep going, because we're doing okay with this. And so I now have 43 of them.
Wow.
And one EP and an instructional DVD.
Wow. And you reached number 1 in Billboard's country charts with Good Time Charlie. And it should be mentioned that you have a pair of CMA awards and 7 ACM awards. And you're in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Not too shabby. Not too shabby.
No, I'm telling you, like I said, my career is like a fairy tale. International Musicians Hall of Fame, West Virginia Music Hall of Fame as well.
And you're a doctor. You're a doctor, too. And when you have a chance, I got this little something on my elbow I need you to look at, doctor, if you don't mind.
Yeah, right. I was given an honorary doctorate from the West Virginia University.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, man, I said, would my mama be proud? Because here's a guy who dropped out of college.
Well, hey, of course, I booked you there at the station, and you've been here a couple times. Man, and people, live show, you put on a great live show. People love it, man. You mix in some good corny jokes, and had Jason.
Oh, well, I borrowed a lot of Hee Haw stuff. That's
perfect.
Yeah, and you brought Jason Cohen, who he. I don't know if Lee was there, but Jason Cohen, Floyd Kramer's grandson,
right,
who does that slide key thing.
That boy is so good.
Yeah,
he is amazing. He and I have been playing together off and on about 10 years. I swear I've never heard him make a mistake. I'm not kidding you.
Oh, well, I saw him doing some live stream recently, and I don't. Usually you walk by those, and I didn't have time, but I had to stop and listen. Man, it was pretty cool what he had going on. But we're having you guys back. Hopefully, all this COVID's behind us next year, in the spring. So hopefully,
we're hoping so for sure. I got to do that streaming thing he does.
Oh, I didn't see you on that one. When I watched, I don't think you were there. Was that?
Yeah, that was so much fun.
Yeah, everybody looked like he was outside having a fun time, man. That was good. And Floyd and his grandpa, if I remember right, you and he were did your first session together? Is that right? Or is it...
Yeah, we Floyd and I had 4 things where our career really crossed that are monumental to me. Number 1, he was on that Brendan Lee session I watched.
Oh,
the first session I saw. Number 2, he played on my first record.
Cool.
Number 3, I did 18 years of concerts up in my hometown to raise money for the town park. He came and played my concert one year. And of course, then the other thing was he was the first musician inducted in the Hall of Fame in 2003.
Wow.
And then in 2009, I joined him there.
Wow. That's amazing.
Nice.
Well, now, one thing I've always wondered is, are there any words to Last Date? Or is that
there
instrumental?
Was a vocal version. I want to think that maybe Skeeter Davis recorded.
Oh, okay, I've never heard any
believe.
words. I mean, I heard
Yeah.
heard the music, so I've never heard.
I mean, it wasn't a big hit or anything, but yeah, there were words to it.
Yeah. Well, we'll let you go here in a minute. I know we won't supposed to keep you probably this long, but one more thing I just thought of is this is something that amazes me is the way I see some of these harmonica guys in the 70s and 80s, they would have these big bells of harmonicas, look really cool. And when you came to the station, you had yours in your pocket. And I thought, how's he going to know? You just reach in there and pull out. Do you have some kind of
vest? I have a vest that's made.
Oh, and you know where to put them,
exactly for harmonicas.
Well, I was fascinated. I kept watching. I thought, how's he doing that?
Well, the key to it is put them in the right place to begin with.
Yeah, be organized.
Because I never look at them, when I pull them out of there. I just look to make sure if it's right side up. But as far as making sure which one it is, I don't, because I have a system, and hopefully I do it right. But you know what? As somebody asked me, so what do you like better, studio work or
I was going to ask
playing
you that.
live? And
Yeah,
I said, you know what? I like the combination because, number one, in the studio, that recording machine, the only thing it'll tell you is exactly what you played. It won't tell you if it liked it or not.
Yeah.
Whereas playing live, you get the immediate feedback of people.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I love a combination. But there's not much combination this year.
No.
Well, I know I do. One thing I like to do is at the station, because I'm there for so many shows, that I'll go back and look in the side doors at the audience where I can see their faces. And sometimes, you can read very easily. But I remember your show, everybody just had a constant grin. It seemed like on their face. They were so, maybe those jokes you were telling. But they were loving your music and everything.
I remember a lot of Hee Haw stuff, that's for sure.
Very handy. I got to ask you one question. I know we're going over, but real quick, are you a sentimental kind of guy? You can look back on this amazing career, all that you've done, so many things. Are you sentimental? Do you ever put yourself back in time, so to speak?
Oh, yeah. There's certain, I've done so many sessions, but there are certain ones that stick out to me that I remember. I remember where I was standing in the studio,
Wow.
like He Stopped Loving Her Today.
Cool.
Old Dogs, Children, Watermelon Wine. That's my favorite record I ever played on.
Really? Wow.
Tom T. Hall. Yeah.
Okay.
Huh.
I remember special things about sessions. I remember when the producer was Billy Sherrill. When he sat down and played the song through once at the piano so George Jones could sing it. This is He Stopped Loving Her Today.
Mm-hmm.
Because the piano player on the session was Pig Robbins, who's blind.
Oh, yeah.
But you only have to play it once for Pig Robbins. I promise you that.
Right.
But anyway, when he was playing that song, every musician in the room were looking around at each other like, oh, my gosh. This is special. I mean, every once in a while you're on one of those and you get that, everybody gets that feeling, that this is going to be something really special. I had that feeling on Pretty Woman.
Cool.
When we were doing Pretty Woman, and some of those things are, and got to record with Gordon Lightfoot.
Wow.
Wow.
What song? What song?
It's called the Canadian Railroad Trilogy.
Okay, yes. I'm familiar with that, yeah.
And that guy's amazing. And saw him in Florida 2 winters ago. He had a concert down there, and we went backstage and talked to him a while. It was fun to see him again.
Wow. It's wonderful.
Man, well, I think you're the most interesting guy in the world to that other guy, whoever he is. I mean, musically, you certainly are. But, well, anything else you got there? We might be able to.
No, I just got to say, I mean, the hairs in the back of my head just stand up listening to you. I mean, I don't care what you say, sir. You are a legend. And I think all of us, no matter what genre we prefer, just owe you a debt of thanks for contributing to some of the great music that has been the soundtrack of our lives for the past, well, I'm not going to say because we don't want to age anybody, but for a very long time. Okay?
Let's don't age anybody. I'll be 80 next year.
Wow, good for you. You sound wonderful and you look wonderful.
Well, I feel great. And I'm I'm a big walker, and I'm really serious about it. I mean, I'm obsessive about it.
Wow.
And I believe that's the key to my good health. I'm not kidding you. I've been doing it 25 years.
Well, hey, you didn't have hardly any senior moments, so I think me and Lee have more than you do.
Yeah, we had more senior moments. You're tallying them up right now. We keep track. I
did want to mention your book, though, that I highly recommend because I was telling Lee before he got here, we were saying that I think I was telling you one day we were when you were here in town. I was saying, man, you was telling some good stories. I said, you need to write a book. Or anyway, and he said, oh, well, he's got a book.
Nice,
but it's 50 cents in a box top, and it seriously is a. Man, there's a lot.
Is that how much it costs, Billy? It's only 50 cents in a box top? That's very inexpensive.
I think it's been. I think that's talking about his first harmonica.
I'm sorry.
Hey, it was 1949.
1949.
Okay.
Well, hey, that's a
good.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, and that's your website. Did you say you're charliemccoy.com? Is that correct?
Yeah, charliemccoy.com.
That's easy.
All
to remember.
43 CDs, EP, instructional DVD, and the book are all there.
And they're all in print. I like to hear that.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, they're all in print because we are actually, my wife and I are actually the mail order. It goes through a website, so people can buy with their credit card, but we're the ones who fill the orders.
Oh, good. Okay.
Hey.
Yeah,
Good.
so
family operation.
yeah, it's a family operation, and we even do it in Florida. I mean, we have enough stock, we take stock with us because the mail order goes on all year, and we want to make sure that when people want something, they can get it.
Yeah.
And the holidays are coming. Hey, folks, for the Christmas gifts.
Plus, folks can catch you overseas. It looks like about as much as they can catch you here, right? You do a lot of overseas shows.
Yeah, well, I was supposed to go. Let's see. I was supposed to have a Mediterranean cruise this year, and a tour in Sweden. And needless to say, those went by the wayside. I was also supposed to be on the Country Family Reunion country cruise in December out of Galveston. That got canceled. And so, but. Almost every artist I know are in the same boat.
Literally in the same boat.
Yeah.
Or they would have been in the same boat. They were canceled.
Yeah.
And when you rebook them, by the way, Billy and I are available as road crew because that Mediterranean thing sounds great.
We'll carry your gear, all those harmonicas.
Whatever it takes. Yeah.
Yeah, right. What I love to do is get on stage setting up and the drummer is hauling all this stuff in, and I like to look back and held up one harmonica and say, the choices we make when we're young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hilarious.
Well, we certainly hope that we could see you in the spring here in East Tennessee at the station, and hopefully, heck, we may have to do a part 2. You got so much info, but we'll do that when we're here. Anyway, we're going to sign this thing off here, and Lee, you want to give us a professional outro here?
Well, I'm a little intimidated. We were just talking to the professional. But anyway, thanks very much for tuning into my Backstage Pass. And this has been Billy Hubbard. My name is Lee Zimmerman. Thank you, Charlie McCoy.
Yes, thank you, Charlie.
And, hey, we'll see you very soon.
Okay, thank y'all. And, man, I really hope it happens over there in April.
Yeah.
Station.
Yeah, we'll be in touch and looking forward to it. Yeah, surely we will. So, anyway, Charlie, thanks a lot. And we're gonna, if I could sing "Happy Trails," I'd sing it. But we're just gonna say "Happy Trails" to everybody.
Yes, sir. And hey, y'all stay safe over there.
You too. Thank you, Charlie.
Okay.
Bye.
Later.